How's it
Oh,
going?
nice. Yeah, no, things are going good. Yeah, I've had a bit of an easy day today, just easy ride, kind of in between races, but yeah, it's good.
Are you in the Netherlands now, or do you guys have like another home base with Trinity?
Belgium is where our base is, so yeah, we're racing in the Netherlands this weekend, but yeah, most of our races are in Belgium, so yeah, this is our base.
Okay, awesome. Is the you got some other teammates there with you?
I did last week. Chiara from Italy was also racing out here, but she's just gone home to have her kind of bit of off season, and then I think she's coming back in December. So yeah, for now it's just me.
Okay, great. What about will you head up to the race today, tomorrow morning?
Tomorrow, yeah. So it's like 3 4 hours.
Okay.
So I'm gonna do my openers in the morning, just at home, and then head up and do a little roller spin, and then I'll be ready for Saturday.
Okay, great. That's an interesting thing with openers. We have a Discord chat for the Evoke athletes, and
Okay.
there's always this question about if you're going into a race weekend, should you do openers when you're traveling? Should you not do openers? Do you typically always try to get something in?
Yeah, but the kind of opener session is really like loose. There's no real structure to it. I have a guide in my head of what I know kind of works for me, but yeah, for example, today, like I felt pretty rough on the bike and didn't feel great. So tomorrow, I imagine I'll just go in and see how I feel. Whereas if I come off like a really easy week, I would put a bit of emphasis on really getting a good effort in to get that kind of for me in the head. It's all just like the feeling of like going right into deep into your chest, and then it's out.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is mental, right? It's like
Yeah. Oh,
just whatever works for you, whatever makes you feel good going into race day.
yeah. No, exactly. So for me, yeah, I'm not the best at sprinting, so I do want to do that a little bit the day before just to feel that. But and then so like 3 sprints, 5 minutes at tempo, and then a couple of 1 minutes. But those kind of 1 minutes at the end are a lot more dependent on how I feel. But as long as I do that kind of 5 minutes of like 5 10 minutes of like solid tempo, I feel like I've kind of got enough in me. But yeah, for cross, because it's so short but so intense, like you if you go in super super chill and super recovered and not very open, you can basically miss the gun. Like you can really you do need to be right on it from the first lap. Whereas I think with road racing, I think those openers are maybe more of a mental thing, so you can go in knowing that when the race starts going, you can have it. So there's a little bit of a difference there for me.
100%. Yeah. What about on race day? Do you have like a specific warm up you do?
Yeah, also like with cross racing, that it's very flexible. When we're racing, like 2 or 3 times a week. The warm up is the worst part of the day. I absolutely hate it. Like it's so monotonous and just like it's when you feel the worst on the bike, I think anyway. Like I'm nervous, my legs feel slow, and I just know I've got to get it out of the way and then I can go to the start. But I do try and remind myself like, just give it enough attention and then it's out of the way and then you've done everything you have to do. So for me, that's it's fairly similar to the day before openers, but 10 minutes easy riding, and then kind of a 5 10 minute ramp just to get the heart rate all the way up to almost max by the end, and another 5 minutes easy, and then some just rev outs at the end. So I have experimented with my warm up over the years, and my start is not the best. So I think there's still possibly some things that we could do with the warm up protocol. Definitely my caffeine protocol has improved over the last few years, and that's helped on that first lap. Um, but with the warm up, it's always difficult because there's always going to be a minimum of 20 minutes before where you aren't on the rollers. So it's like, how hot do you come off the warm up to then, have nothing, and then for 20 minutes and then you're racing. Or a lot of guys, when we race at 3 p.m., they go for like a very easy ride in the morning. So like 30 minutes, 1 hour in the morning, and then that's kind of part of their warm up. So it means that when they get to the race, I guess they're in that kind of, their legs are already, the blood's going around everything. But there's loads, all that stuff with routine. There's loads in it, but a lot of it is just very personal.
100%. Just finding what works for you. I'm
Yeah.
curious though, when you said your caffeine, what have you experimented? Are you doing more caffeine, less caffeine, or when you're taking it?
Yeah, so I don't have caffeine day to day. I don't drink coffee or anything. So for me, I think there were some good benefits to be had from properly doing caffeine. So um, yeah, I'm just basing on the loading of the kind of 45, 50 minutes before for the main bit of caffeine. And then the gel I have just before the race is at about 5 minutes. And that's kind of, yeah, to get me the kind of, yeah, that 45 minutes before is for the start. And then that other gel is maybe towards the end. I think carbs for me are never really an issue. Like for an hour race, you'd be doing pretty well to bunk if you are eating a normal amount of food. But as yeah, it's more like the timing and the personal side of it. Like yeah, not eating so much food that you just feel sick. So just like looking after yourself.
I know that you have your nutrition dialed. I'm going to do a link. If anybody doesn't know who Cameron is, you got the amazing YouTube channel and on Instagram and everything. You got some great content there. But is the caffeine, is that just kind of part of your nutrition, or is that specific for racing? Is that like a tool there?
Um, in what respect? What do you mean
I
by for
guess,
the around the racing?
yeah, I guess what I meant was with you, kind of, uh, I can't, I'm losing my words here, but with your caffeine intake, kind of having it only on race day, is that something specific for competition?
Um, Not really. Like I don't drink coffee, just a personal thing. Like it's not like I'm staying away from it. I know that some riders do like think if they are really into their coffee, then they like, get maybe a little bit worried that they are kind of stimulating it a lot and they need a lot then extra. Cause I was looking a little bit at Alex Dowsett's record and he was saying about how he was literally having hundreds and hundreds of milligrams of caffeine for the attempt. Because they had a full caffeine, yeah, protocol for him there, which yeah, that's a very one-time thing. I don't think for me, even after Sunday's most recent race, by racing at 3:05 p.m. and loading caffeine for that, I didn't sleep very well the day after, the night after, and I had a race the next day. So that's a quite important thing I think to also think about. Yeah, long term, like not going mad with that, but no, yeah, around the race, it's purely performance.
Yeah. I guess I was thinking of an interview that I read with Jeremy Powers was talking about when he went into cross season, he would change his caffeine dosage so he would get more out of it on race day. But he was more of a regular coffee drinker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. And like, like I've experimented a little bit with different types of like getting my caffeine, like gels and also with like caffeine chewing gum, because it's quite a nice thing to go to the race with. Also another thing from Jeremy Powers, I remember seeing it was at Cross Vegas. He would take a little bit of gum to the start line just to keep his mouth kind of, going good. But if you do that with a caffeine chewing gum, it's even better because you're getting it straight in. But for me, just like 75 milligram caffeine gels is good for me.
So what about going back to race day? What time are you typically arriving on course? These are like these questions the athletes always have. Like, I know it's different for you. You're racing in the afternoon. You have all day. So maybe you have some nerve. What are you doing? What's your race day routine? And what do you do to kind of deal with like, okay, you have all day to worry about the race?
Yeah, like especially like in Belgium, a lot of the races are quite close. So say the drive is only 30 minutes. Yeah, that's all morning. You've got to, be inside your own head. But I try and keep my routine the same for everything. So whether I'm racing at 11, 12 or at 3, my routine is the same. So I want to arrive at the race 3.5 hours before. And that gives me the first little half hour to just sort everything out with the mechanics or with things. And then my pre-race meal is exactly 3 hours before. And that's just some simple pancakes and some raspberries and a bit of maple syrup. With that as well, like I cook a set amount of them, but normally I save a few for just to kind of snack on going at. So I eat the majority in one go, and then that 3 hours gives it time to get through me. And then I'm riding on course 2.5 hours before. That's half an hour of practice, and then finishing that, shower, change, pin on numbers, and then there's usually about 45 minutes, an hour of chill time. And for me, that's music or maybe watching the women's race on TV, especially if it's like changing conditions and the weather and everything. You just want to see like, are they all crashing on the first corner, or are they running this section? Some people I think maybe wouldn't like to do that because it would get them quite nervous, and it does for me. Like I'm literally watching these women like, suffering and going super hard. I'm like, well, I've got to do that in like an hour. But if you I would just tune in for like one lap, just see what's going on, and then switch it off, and then put my music back on. And then like 45, 50 minutes before the race on the rollers or the turbo for 20, 25 minutes. Sometimes, like we were saying before with that warm up, I might feel I only need like 10 minutes warm up because I'm knackered. I can feel legs from the next day. So I'm like, I'm just going to hop on with for 10 minutes and then that's me done. Whereas say I've come off a big training block and I haven't had that race feeling for a while, I would maybe prolong that. And then it's 20 minutes before the race off the warm up, change base layer to the start, and then away we go.
What about speaking of watching the women's race, do you ever is there time for communication? Like say, can you talk to some of the women racers before you go on course? Does that ever happen?
Yeah. So if I have a female teammate at the race, like our schedules kind of cross over. So as I arrive to the race, she's finishing her practice laps. So I get a little bit of information there. And then when I'm on the rollers, their race would just finish and I would, maybe chat to them for a few minutes. Also the same when I finish my practice, she's on her warm up. So then that's a good opportunity to go like, this corner has changed loads, or you'll be fine here, or something like that. Because I think it's, especially for that, for once you're in the race, it's the same for everyone. But if you can get a little bit more knowledge or a little bit more know-how for that first lap, it does make a difference.
No, for sure. I'm thinking about the last couple of World Cups at the US. There was like in the women's race, it was dry, then it started to rain at the end. And I know some people were changing from files to mids and they hadn't done any practice runs on the mids. Yeah. What I was going to say also for your warm up, are you, again, super personal, but I'm just curious here. Like a lot of people say like they get in that mindset of like, okay, I'm going to war. And then some people are like, I want to stay cool and calm. Do you have like kind of a headspace you like to get into? Yeah,
I think for the mental side of it is massive. And it's something that I think I've improved a lot over the last year, like through my injuries that I've had this summer. The kind of psychology I've gone into more. I've been seeing a psychologist about my racing and about my injuries and stuff. And I think it's given me just that little bit of a different level to my understanding of, how my own mind works. And it's been interesting. Like before races I have done in this season already, I don't think I've ever felt more chilled about racing at this level. And that's a real kind of, real change. Like I always have those good nerves, and those good nerves come in that kind of 1 hour in between before, but everything up to that feels like easy, like it is my day job. So I think there's something in that, showing that, I'm coming into my own and stuff. But even like, so on Monday we raced on the Koppenberg, and the day before I had a really good ride, and I definitely felt just personal pressure to then back that up. And I was starting to feel a little bit overwhelmed. But through the summer, we worked on techniques to focus my attention. So I did 9-10 minutes of just attention practice before I went onto the warm up, and off the back of that, I felt great. So like it's amazing. Like I wasn't equipped with that skill before this season, and I feel loads better for it.
That's great. Congratulations. Yeah, congrats on the result too. You're second on Monday. That's amazing.
Yeah, boys. Yeah, it already feels like ages ago now, but it was a savage race, and I definitely just raced my own race. I don't know, it's basically a big cow field, and then the cobbled climb, like it's very polarized, and the speeds were so low, it was super heavy going, and I knew if you tried to respond to anyone, went into the red, that you would just make a mistake. So I knew that Pim Ronar, the world champ, was just kind of round the corner, and I was just riding my own race. And as soon as he made one mistake, I would ride back up to the wheel and he would get away. And it was just this kind of constant yo-yoing. And in the end, I was catching, and then he just kind of pipped me at the end by 5 seconds or so, which, after a race like that, there's quite a close gap really on a course like that, where I wouldn't say we were actually racing each other directly. We were both just trying to get to the finish as fast as possible, which is quite a cool kind of, way to race a bike race.
That's interesting. People talk about that all the time, about a lot of courses as they change, and I'm saying weather conditions, but even just courses in general, that you're not necessarily racing your fellow athletes. You're just racing the course.
Yeah, exactly. That's what my mechanic is, an ex-pro rider, and we just chatted before the race and said, you just race your own race. You focus on what you're doing. That might mean you're out the front and people come up to you. That might mean you're coming through the group. But just focus on yourself, and it worked. It worked well.
So I want to talk about your injuries. I know you've battled through major adversity, but going back to like racing your own race, with the UCI points being changed, being erased, people say I talk too much about UCI points, but I think this is big. I'm sure that was probably a change for you going into these races. You did the videos about starting at the back. How did that change your mindset going into some of these races?
Yeah, I think I'm a pretty good example of someone that's maybe come with a bit of a short straw with that, because they reset it after Worlds and continuing with the Worlds points. And I didn't race Worlds because of injury. So I started with bang on zero. And I think if I'd put more effort and attention into it, I could have started my cross season super early and maybe done a kind of Vincent Bastain's program and got out to America and all this stuff to build that. But I just didn't really have the means to do that. So starting in the back every time. But I've managed to, even in 4 races, amass plenty of points. So for me, it's not really an issue. But it just depends. Some of the races have such a harsh cutoff, really. Like you go to a Belgian UCI race, and if you're not in the top 15, you get no points. So you could battle a whole season of Belgian racing and come out at the end of it with no UCI points to show for it. Versus you could be a British UK racer, and there's 5 UCI races, 6 UCI races in the year, and you could finish in the top 5 at every one. So that's a good thing, I think, because then with those UCI points, you should be encouraged to then go and race World Cups or international events, and that kind of will hopefully raise people's levels. But I definitely feel for the Belgian national riders who just, they have to travel to different countries and all this to get their UCI points, because where they live is the home of their sport, and it's the home of the top level of sport. So it's almost like, I think with what they're doing with the World Cup, 16 World Cups, the kind of level below at the moment is like Super Prestige and X2O Trophy. That's basically still the same level as World Cup. So almost you need another level to that, which is like semi-amateur, that can help Belgian cross, because it's quite savage place to, I'm sure you'll know about the road racing as well. It's quite a savage place to be a bike rider. It makes great talent, and they have such a massive pyramid of talent. But you only see the best of the best. Whereas for a lot, like I think in America and I think in the UK, the amateur scene is very strong and has real good roots and all this. So in Belgium, it's maybe not so much.
So these are going to be my words, not yours. But it's like the US, I'm based out of the US, but the US the racing here just isn't at the level as the Belgium racing, So you get guys racing C1s and C2s here who accumulate a lot of points. They go over, race the World Cups, and they're ahead of some guys who have been racing in, the hardest Belgium races. Do you think, maybe this is a controversial question, do you think that's maybe a little bit why the US riders kind of, I'm not going to use the word not disrespect, but maybe just aren't viewed in the same light as some of the other racers?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm putting you on the spot. I know.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of that have been that I can kind of see with match up to like being a UK rider as well, and more now that the UK scene has more UCI races. Maybe lesser riders could come to Europe and get gridded at the front. But yeah, I mean, when I started watching cyclocross, yeah, when I was like 10 or 11, finding the dodgy streams online in Belgium, Jeremy Powers always had a front row grid. And I think that was important for the sport. It's visibility, it's all this stuff. And Ian Field, the kind of representative of the UK scene, he was always just peeking out there in that second row because he was amassing points. So if every nation can kind of have their little rider at the front, then it's important for the international side, but only if they can actually see that on the TV. So now we have coverage. Now we have things like GCN that are showing it to loads of different countries. That is good, and but we are also in a sport that if you don't have good gridding, you can have a really bad race, and that will affect the actual running of the race itself. So yeah, it's that balance between making it for everyone, but then if you're chucking Belgian guys in the middle of the pack that otherwise would have been animating the race, then it's like, what are you sacrificing here? You're maybe sacrificing how good the actual race is. So
That's a great point. That's ultimately what I was getting at. I think there are plus and minuses to it all, pros and cons. But you are out there in the thick of it. You're racing the hardest races and you're getting these points. So congratulations, man.
Thank you. And I think with how the season starts in America, I think it's a good way for the Europeans to kind of, immerse themselves a little bit more in the American way of racing. And then it means that when those American riders come over, I think a lot of them have just finished a big block, right, with this kind of US kind of series. And I imagine they'll be starting to come over to Europe in the next month or so. And then it's almost like, around Christmas time with those World Cups, you have a full international field again. At the moment, it's kind of a bit of a weird, for the American riders, like a weird middle ground of, some have made the trip, but not really many. It's literally just Cannondale, isn't it? Well, it's just Honsinger, really.
I think it's just Clara. Yeah, there's a few more UCI races. There's a race in Massachusetts this weekend, and then another one actually in Massachusetts the following weekend. But then I think most people will go over, or maybe take a little rest block and then go for the curse period. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
What about, so staying on the topic of the US? I don't think have you done any races in the US? I didn't see anything. Yeah.
No.
But you'll be coming over for World Championships, right?
If I get selected, I hope I will get selected. That's the plan, and it would be my first time. I was supposed to be racing in those 3 World Cups with my teammate Chris Blevins, but he decided to cut his season a bit earlier so he could have his well-deserved rest. So for me, I ended up just rescheduling to start in Belgium. But I was watching the World Cup because it's for the same course. And it was interesting. I think I did tweet publicly that I thought it was just way too wide. Everything was just like 8 meters wide, like ridiculously wide. And it's like that for all world champs courses for some reason. I can't get my head around how, like, I think course designers must just arrive and go, oh yeah, like there's going to be loads of people on track. There's going to be loads of spectators. We just need to make it incredibly wide. They make it super wide. And then the riders will ride on the other side they'll be just miles away from the spectators. So I think that's, I'd appreciate if they make things a bit narrower. But overall, I think it's an interesting course, bit of climbing, which I think will suit me. It's interesting that because of I think it's fairly new ground, isn't it? Like new grass and stuff, how it just looked like a big sponge they were riding over a lot of the time. Because it was just like turf on top. But I wonder how that will kind of bed in ready for Worlds.
So I talked to Kerry Werner yesterday and we were talking about the course, and it was all sod. Apparently there was this whole thing. I won't get too much into it, but the UCI wasn't happy with their grass, so they put sod down. Wow. And then with the conditions, apparently all the sod was just completely destroyed. Wow. So they're going to have to redo everything and they might change it up. So, and I guess they're making some tweaks to the course. Yeah. But the word you used, interesting, that was pretty much the same. Everyone I've talked to was like, it's interesting. They said it was more like a cross country course, more like a mountain bike course. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I see what they've done with a few bank turns and stuff. And that's interesting in terms of that we don't see it very often. And there's a little bit of like, oh, will it work? Like, is there a reason we don't see it that often? But there's something, I think there's something in that course for everyone. I was a bit confused at why the steps are amazing, super hard, everything, and then you get to the top of the hill and then you just ride directly back down. And I just watched that and got, oh my god, we're gonna have to climb up like 36 steps, whatever it is, and then just go no breaks back downhill with like no corners. And so I hope they put in like a horrible little dog leg or a horrible off camera to make most of that amazing bit of climbing you just did, because the little like lumps and jumps were cool, but the reality in a race, everyone will get on at the top, clip in, and then just freewheel down, and nothing will have happened in that whole section.
I know. The good news, I do think that they are working on changing that specific area, because I think you had like the little like bumps with the off cambers after that. I think they're going to change that.
And it looks like they have lots to work with, like the tree section and everything. So no, it's great they've done that test event, and I didn't even race it, and I've got things to say. So yeah, they shouldn't really be listening to me. They should be listening to other people who actually did the race, because they had a great field for it.
Well, what about, so for European champs on Saturday, is this a new course?
It is. And from what I've heard, it's maybe quite similar to Worlds, like on an artificial hill with a bit of cobbles. I've heard it's going to be quite heavy going. And yeah, but new courses is always good. Everyone's kind of goes there with the same knowledge. Whereas if you go to like a classic, there's this already like, oh, he's the favorite because he's won there before, or like he never does well in this race. So I think that's nice to keep it open.
It's nice to have a balance there. I love watching the classics courses, but it is nice to see something new. Just like you said, everyone's experiencing it for the first time. What's the weather look like?
It's been very wet for the last week in Belgium and Netherlands. It's going to be relatively dry leading up to it, but I think the damage has been done with the rain. So like Koppenberg, well, it rained like loads in Overijssel, as you'll maybe seen on TV, and then that already affected Koppenberg, and then it rained again, and then it's rained again today and yesterday. So yeah, it's gonna be wet.
Have you done any specific training? I guess this is a bigger question. Specific training for this course, and will you do any specific training for other courses going into them?
Yeah, well, after the first weekend of racing, which for me was Riddervoorde and Zonhoven, there were a few little things that we picked up on that maybe needed a little bit of work. Like my running wasn't particularly strong and just general things. But already last week we did a specific kind of Euros session, which was a kind of pyramid type effort session, because I think that kind of very polarized effort that you do on a hilly course. I just wanted to get a good solid session like that in last week. So it was a 1, 2, 3 minute up and then down, all at basically max. And the time off was, I did it on like a flat canal with a tailwind, so that the time off was 100% freewheeling, and then just totally on at zone whatever 6 or zone 5, or I wasn't even looking at the power. I was just like gritting through it, and then it was what it was. I think I dropped off quite a bit towards the end, but that's normal. And yeah, it was nice to, so that was the one kind of specific session we did last week.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like a lot of cross training is like that. It's like max watts, it's just, you're just going as hard as you can.
Yeah.
What's the balance of your training? Well, I want to know what you do in the season, but then going for preseason, what's the balance of like road riding and mountain bike riding and time on the cross bike? Is it kind of just like advantageous, do whatever? Or I think I read an interview where you said you did mostly road.
Yeah. So at the moment, I would say out of the 5 kind of training days a week, only 1 is on the cross bike. But then in the 7 days of the week, that's more like 3 out of 7 because of the racing days. So a normal training week is Monday, easy day and an easy run. Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday is the kind of work block. And then Friday is either, depending on how we've done the week, is either a total easy day with an easy ride, or kind of reopening back up. Sometimes with that in between, you maybe get the work done a bit earlier in the week. Sometimes you would back up the race. For us, like on the Monday, you would go out and you would do an endurance backup. And then you would then have your rest day on the Tuesday. so yeah, there's ways of doing it, but the balance between training and recovering is really tough for cross. And there are things that I tick off in the week, like I want to go for a run, and then Wednesday I always do cyclocross training on the actual bike, and then by the weekend again, you're hopefully ready to go.
Yeah, I think cross, and I'd like to know your opinion here, is like there's so much data you can track in cycling in general, right? You know, but when it comes to cross, it's really going into how you feel, because like those cross races are so hard to measure. You got heart rate and you got power metrics and stuff, but really how you feel and how much recovery you need is all specific to that, you know, the athlete.
Yeah, and it was interesting. I rode one of my bikes at Koppenberg, had a power meter on it, so I was recording power every other lap basically. And I think I recorded a full race of power a few years ago and made a video about it, and it was basically just mega spiky. But the heart rate for every race is just like that, boom, solid for me at my threshold every time. Like every other race, maybe I set a new like heart rate threshold. It's literally just always sitting around that. So yeah, like the training for that is, how do you get your heart rate up to there and then continue to produce watts? So yeah, like the data isn't that important, as you say. A race is a race. 1 hour full gas is always like that, but it does depend. Like in my feedback, I would be quite, I would put in detail what that race did feel like, because the difference between like a fast dry race 1 hour full gas is very different to a really heavy running race full gas. So I would say they're both on Training Peaks. They would both be like a 9 or 10 out of 10, but the kind of how that actually feels is a little bit different. And I expect you feel that the next day. So like a really fast like crit race one, you go really deep, but you're not quite like totally like done by the end, whereas a mud race you are.
No, for sure. And I think some of those races do, all the races you need concentration, don't get me wrong, but some of those races were muddier, you got those conditions, and like you really got to concentrate, change your line choice. You can't just kind of go into autopilot on all those laps.
Yeah. And it's like, as we were saying before, about sometimes you have to race your own race and you race the course. But then for me, the races where you always have to be switched on to everyone around you, I find a little bit harder. Not really coming much from the road background. I find the positioning and the using your energy in certain parts a little bit harder. I prefer the kind of mountain bike effort, which is you're basically riding a time trial normally. You're riding to your own ability. Whereas having someone else put the hurt on you I'm not so used to. But it's something I'm getting better at with the little bit of road racing I've done this year, and also want to improve next year.
Okay, great. Off topic question, but I want to go back to that. This came up in the chat again. Is there a limit to how many bikes you can bring in the pit with you?
There's a limit to the amount of people, but I can't really see there being a limit of like. I can't remember what world champs it was. Maybe it was in Denmark. And when I would ride past Mathieu van der Poel's like setup, I think he had 6 bikes with him for the race. So he had like 3 and 3, and quite a few of them went to the pits. And I think he's probably got nightmares from that Worlds in Beals, where he punctured every half lap, because they ran out of wheels basically in that race. So he kept puncturing, and his mechanics had to go and ask other teams for wheels to put into his bikes, because I think he punctured like 13 times in the race, which you just can't get your head around. And Wout punctured once, and it's mad. But he like broke wheels, punctured everything, and literally ran out of equipment. So
I could be wrong here, but is that the one where Wout had the green Michelin tire? Okay, yeah, okay, yeah, and yeah, that's actually, I asked that. This question came up because I was thinking about. I remember seeing that photo of Van der Poel with like 6 bikes, and I was like, is he bringing all these to the pit with him? But going back to, we were talking about training. I lost my train of thought. We'll come back to it.
In the off season, my bike split is a little bit different.
Okay.
Is that what you were?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah. So how much time are you spending then on? I know you've done some gravel riding and stuff. Are you kind of like, is your training plan like go out and ride for a certain amount of hours and you can pick which bike? Or are you getting nailing it? I'm sure like on interval days you're getting specific, but what does that look like in the preseason?
It depends. Some of those rides are like that. There's like a set duration and a set intensity, and then the rest is up to me. That would normally be like on a Saturday or Sunday. Like a Sunday ride for me is like an endurance long day, and I can, if I feel like riding 5 hours mountain bike, I'll do that, or gravel or road. I prefer, it's quite specific to what I'm training for. So this year I've done a little bit more gravel racing. So I would maybe actually do my efforts on the gravel bike on off road. But then there's some type of efforts that you would need to do on a road bike, like really long efforts where you have a long road or a stretch of unimpeded kind of road. But yeah, like if I have a mountain bike race coming up, then the mountain bike time will go up. But generally, I think I ride two bikes a week. Never really three, because that is quite a lot of switching. I'm dead lucky to be able to ride with all these bikes. Is amazing. But yeah, doing a mountain bike ride and then doing a gravel ride and doing a road ride, and there's those little things that you have to change with your riding each time. It does add up. I think I'm quite good at switching bikes, and like a lot of the best riders are like Van der Poel can just next day go race a World Cup and all this stuff. But if you do it too often, you never really kind of get settled. Last year I probably did the most road riding I've ever done, and by the end of the year I really felt like a strong road rider, like being able to hold speed and all this. So there's something to be said, I think, for if you want to accumulate those hours by doing it on one bike, you will get very good at it.
No, definitely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there when you think of guys like Pidcock and Van der Poel, who are so good at everything, like a really good top level, and everyone wants to be the same, of course, but it's spending time on some specific bikes, especially going into whatever your goal races are. I think there's, just like you said, like there's something to be said for accumulating time on your race bike.
Yeah. There's a reason that, like, it will be the same with Tom and Van der Poel. Like 90% of their riding will be on the road bike, and because that is really their main goal is the world tour. So that's if they spent all their time on the mountain bike, they would be better mountain bike riders, but that's not what they're focusing for.
Yep, that's a really good point. So speaking specifically of cross, then how much? People are always asking like skills and drills, and there's a lot of stuff to do. Is there anything specifically that you like to do going into cross season that gets you prepared?
There are like some specific things that are really important for cross, but I find mostly just being comfortable off-road does most of it for me. So because I ride my mountain bike through the summer and the gravel and all this, by the time it gets to cross season, it feels just normal, like jump on the cross bike and things are kind of where they should be. This year actually was probably the least amount of cross time I've ever done, and it's the best season I'm ever having. So I don't really think there's a direct correlation between loads of cross bike time, even though what we just discussed about riding and training the bike will help. I think maybe it might be personal that I find it quite easy to then just hop into the racing. Ideally, you'd be on your cross bike doing the specifics, the dismounts, the off cameras, maybe stuff you wouldn't do in normal training. But for me, I didn't really need to do that this year. So I'll probably keep that in mind for next year, that it doesn't need so much time.
And I think the caveat is with someone like you and some of these other elite racers I've talked to is that you've been doing it at such a high level for so long, where someone like me or people listening who don't have those years of hard efforts in their legs, spending a bit more time on the cross bike is advantageous. When you get to Cameron's level, maybe you can dial it back a little bit.
Exactly. It's like the context of it, because where I left off at the end of last season was like a good level. And then to get back to that is not too hard. And also my roof, I'm maybe a little bit closer to my roof of technical skill. Whereas if you're a lot down here, there's loads of room for the improvement. And that's actually with just a little bit of work that you're in that stage where just a little bit of work really can get you far. Whereas if I wanted maybe another 2-3% of confidence and like technical ability, it would take some real solid practice. And I don't really think anyone in top level cyclocross is really doing that, because at the end of the day, like, you don't win the bike race in one corner, you win it in the whole package. So you need to kind of take that in. But for someone at a more amateur level, that whole package, the technical ability might be something that can really, really help with everything else.
Definitely. So you had said before you were hoping to do some more road racing. That's what I lost my train of thought on earlier. Is that just, do you enjoy the road racing, or is that kind of a long-term goal to get into road racing?
I don't really enjoy it. I'm learning to enjoy it this year. It's something I did a little bit when I was like a youth. So 12, 13, 14, just kind of crit racing in Scotland. And I just wasn't strong and I wasn't good enough. And just like, I didn't really see the appeal of going along to these races and getting dropped because I wasn't good enough. So I went and did more of the things I was good at the time, which was mountain biking and cyclocross. So there's definitely like a nature nurture thing there. Like, I just did the things I was good at. So that's why I didn't do much road. But yeah, this year with my injury back in April, I didn't ride off road all summer. And when I was allowed to ride again, it was all on the road. So the racing I did end up being on the road, and it's been interesting. Yeah, like the physical side, as I've grown as a rider and developed, like, I think if you're a strong rider in any discipline, you can do well on the road. But the tactics and the mental side, like, it's a massive, massive thing that I have only just started to try and figure out. Like, my coach and mentor is an ex kind of British champion on the road and in crits. And yeah, there's just so much to go in for. And he's got like 20, 30 years of road racing experience. And he like I actually was able to race with him in a Scottish road race. And yeah, he maybe physically isn't as good as he used to be, but the way that someone like that can read a race and still just pull out a result, I just can't get my head around that. It's like, I should beat you any day, or like, I can drop you, whatever, but he's just still there, or like still got that kick. And then when you kind of scale it up to the World Tour, you think, yeah, that's why guys can win these races. They might not be the most, physiologically gifted riders in the world, but that doesn't matter if you win the bike race. Whereas in mountain bike and cross, I don't think there's any of that to hide behind, which I kind of like because I'm good at that. But with the road, I can definitely see the attraction of that kind of romantic, like, sometimes it doesn't work, sometimes it works, all this. And I think as I get better at that, then of course I'll do more of it. Yeah.
The word I always throw around for these races is artistry. And I think it's just it's a different type of artistry in the road, just like you said, tactics and reading what's happening. When you said, I'm sure you're soaking up knowledge in all these races and with your mentor, is there anything specific that you've picked up or that you're working on, so far?
It's just kind of literally the basics, like positioning, using effort, looking after myself. Like, it didn't take long for me to work out the fueling type thing. Like, for a 3-4 hour race, you just have to eat a lot and get it down you. And everyone feels terrible in the final, but as long as you are carved up somewhat, then you should be able to do the effort. But yeah, it's about getting to that decisive moment of the race in the best place possible. That might be an hour in, it might be on the first lap, or it might be all the way in the final. And how you get to that is everyone's like, you might be a super attacking rider, or for me, you would maybe try and follow the wheels. I think, the way I have been racing road this year would suggest that I would like just to make it hard at every opportunity, and then who's left is who's left. But when you go up a level, I don't think that works forever. You have to get a little bit more kind of cunning and clever.
Speaking of nutrition, because this is something that I think a lot of amateurs struggle with, is they don't eat enough, or they don't know what to eat or when to eat. Do you have a specific plan going into like per hour carbs, or what's kind of your strategy?
Yeah, so I didn't really do much road racing this summer, and it was, yeah, the first I'd done. So I didn't really know where to start with. I just kind of filled my pockets with bars and gels. Didn't touch the bars at all because I had absolutely no time. At every point, I felt like I was just like squeezing onto the handlebars for dear life. So I was no chance I was opening a bar. But for the road races I was doing quite short, like 2 to 3 hours. Whereas for the British national champs was going to be like 4 hours plus. So I did, yeah, just a little bit of thought beforehand about like, yeah, when we get to this point in the race, this pocket should be empty, or I should have changed bottles this amount of time. And yeah, it wasn't really, I was kind of just going off the carbs and everything that I would do in like a hard training session. And I think, yeah, as you race more, I think you'll understand that. So like in the first few road races, I was feeling a little bit kind of bonked at the end because, yeah, I was running out of kind of, yeah, energy. But it's because I wasn't really drinking enough because I was thinking about loads of other things. But yeah, as you get more relaxed in the bunch, I feel like it's a load more easier to get that in. And you see it in like in the World Tour when you see in the team cars, the DSs are always just like eat and drink, eat and drink, eat and drink over the radio because you just need to be reminded all the time, especially when it's cold and you don't want to go in your pockets and all this stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. People always say, this is on a much smaller level, but like for Unbound or Dirty Cans or the gravel race, that it's an eating competition and not a racing competition. And I'm saying, and that's the same thing with a world tour. I would imagine those stages, it's just how much can you eat every day to be ready for the next day?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, for those like, yeah, Froome and Pogacar and all this, it's like it's an eating and sleeping and resting competition. Like what happens on the road happens on the road. Everything else, that's what you have control over. And the best guys do it really, really well.
They definitely do. So what about, let's take a step back and let's talk about, you've had some adversity with some injuries, which have been unfortunate, but you persevered. And I'm sure, I would imagine that this podium this past couple of days ago must be a huge win for you. You got to be super stoked on that. Do you want to kind of walk us through? You have so many videos, but just kind of what happened and how you're feeling now.
Yeah. So my major injuries kind of start about this time last year where I broke my collarbone in Belgium. And up until then, I'd never broken a bone, never had a real actual setback. Now that I know what a setback is, I know what a setback is for my sport in the grand scheme of things. It's maybe not massive, but so my collarbone, it was relatively simple. It had no real complications with it. And then 2 weeks after I got back racing after that, I tore my meniscus in my knee. So that, to be honest, was a lot more complicated than the collarbone because it actually does something. So that was, like a good few months to recover and heal. And then I got fit again, ready for the mountain bike season. And then 2 days after the first race, I broke my humerus just above my elbow. Broke the elbow as well, but the humerus was the main thing. And that needed all kind of put back together. And there were no the doctors were like, oh, you'll never ride again, all this stuff that you see in movies or documentaries. It was just like, this is serious, this will take time. You're going to need to work hard for it to be at least this good or something like this. It's not like I'll give it time, it will get better. It's like, you need to do all the things right. And you maybe will have a chance of getting a functional elbow to then go back to what you need to do. In my head, there wasn't really ever a question of like getting back to what I was doing. It was just like, how hard will it be? How long will it be? That's all I wanted to know, is like when, because they say a year, well, okay, cool. Or like 6 months, cool. Like, is there anything I can do to change that? Yes, no, whatever. So the recovery from that was, a whole thing. It feels like I've been recovering from it all year and it's still not gone away. I would say I'm maybe like 85, 95% strength in this left side. So, but it'll take a while to get that last like 5-10%, but I'm at a point now that I can do everything I could do before. So it's it's been ages, it feels like. But then like with everything, it's a new normal. So I don't really often think about, oh, what did I feel like this time last year with no injuries and stuff. You just normalize it, don't you?
Definitely. You have a great video on YouTube that everyone should check out, where you kind of go through the highs and lows, unfortunately, mostly lows of you getting back to full strength. And I think that's huge. I think that a lot of riders don't share, the mental side of how they feel about things. And it's only natural, like I'm saying, for people, amateurs or weekend warrior riders who, whatever, hurt their foot or their hand or whatever it is, and they can't ride, and how down that makes them feel, and overcoming that. And for you to be at the top of the level and going through this and bouncing back, I think that's great for people to see, and you persevering. And you touched on this earlier with like the mental side of things. Mm-hmm. And it seems like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that it's kind of, in that sense, on the mental side, made you a stronger rider now.
Yeah, I think, if all that stuff hadn't happened, I would be where I would be in some way or another, but through a different route. And I think, this route that I've got to here with has, taught me things on the way. So, I guess I can be grateful for that.
I'm happy to see you out there.
Cool. Thank you.
So so you got European champs this weekend. Do you have a specific goal for the season? Is it world? Well, we talked about world champs. We don't know about the selection, fingers crossed. Do you have a specific goal for the season outside of that?
Well, a few weeks ago, the goal for the season was to just try and find my level again. But very quickly, I realized that my level is totally above where I thought it was. So that's a nice way to start the season, is realizing that, I'm at the top, near the top. So I'm now then thinking, well, what do I need to do to stay there? Or what do I need to do to find that next little bit? But what we're kind of defaulting back to is that, what we're doing is working. So there's no really need to rethink anything or to, think that things need a big change. So my main goals going into the season were the World Cups, the European champs, and then world champs, also with an eye on 2022. Because of my injury and recovery, long term is always better. So so for example, around that American trip at the start of the season, there was an argument that actually long term, if I wasn't 100% ready for that, then I would maybe start the cross season on the back foot, and then that could affect next year. Whereas giving myself a little bit more time, starting the cross season as I have, and then kind of progressing into 2022, just trying to keep ahead of the game and making sure that I'm as good as I can be, because the reality is I'll be finishing cross around world champs, and then having a relatively short break, and then working on my mountain bike and my road. So with that in mind, even at the moment, trying to think like, how do I best prepare for that, and just trying to keep on top of things.
What about, to further complicate things, is there any interest in doing some of the UCI gravel races?
Yeah, there is. So it's something I've started to think about, and when I started to plan it out, I realized there's a lot to be done with gravel, with road, and with mountain bike, and then all the other gravel events that there are. So whereas with cross, I think it's a lot easier to plan for, because the season is quite linear. It's mostly it's a little bit different with the way they've changed the World Cups, but mostly it's still the same. You race every weekend, and you have maybe a couple of weeks off in the middle of the season, and then you continue through. Whereas creating my own program for next year with mountain bike World Cups, with UCI level road racing, with this new gravel series, it's kind of, it's like what Van der Poel and Wout van Aert and Pidcock have had to do, is be the first to do something, which there's no ground rules, there's no precedent already. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but I think if we plan well, then I think it's possible to race all the disciplines next year.
That's great. That's exciting. I'm looking forward to watching you on all the races.
I think it's good. I don't think there's any information about the gravel at the moment yet. It's literally just kind of the headlines, and that's it. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that comes about. And as well with that, there's just no ground ground rules of like who's a good gravel rider, which I think is super interesting. So myself coming from a cross mountain bike background, and there are so many strong marathon mountain bike riders that can compete with these road guys. So I think that kind of clashing of disciplines will be very interesting.
I did hear, I could be way off here, but that the rumor is that the world champ for gravel would be in the US. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, maybe that was announced, but yeah.
No, I'd like to see that. I think the British gravel champs that I did this year in September, they have plans to be one of the World Series events, qualifying events next year. So the idea is you do that, and then as an amateur or a professional, you then can qualify for the world champs, which it would make sense being in America with it being where the people are and where the money is. So.
Switching gears here, social media side of things, like you have this amazing following on YouTube. How long have you been doing the videos?
All forever. Yeah. Like I asked for like a video camera when I was maybe 9, 10 and just got like this tiny little, like, it would be like from Target in American type, comparison. Just, I don't know, it must have been like 20, 30 quid. But it was fully waterproof, which meant I could go out and like put it in rivers and like jump over it on my bike and stuff. And just from watching like Danny McCaskill and like all of the Red Bull mountain bike stuff and Rampage and all of this, that's what I wanted to do. And yeah, up until I really got into my racing, that's all I just wanted to be, like a Red Bull athlete and to be like Danny McCaskill and just make videos and just get paid to do that. That's what I wanted to do for my job. But I realized that that's quite a specific career path, and actually normally comes from doing something else and then coming into it. But yeah, and then when I started to race more and more and then started to get opportunities to go to different countries, it just made sense that I would video it, and because I enjoy the process and then also enjoy watching it after.
Awesome. Well, it seems like now Red Bull's expanding into so many different sports here. There's still an opportunity.
Well, yeah, maybe. I think, they have Tom at the moment with cyclocross. So I think maybe that seat is a little bit filled, but hey, there's always gravel. And I think Red Bull in America show that gravel, there's a lot to be made in that.
Yeah. So, with social media and being a professional cyclist, do you think that there's a huge, how do you think those two go hand in hand?
Well, they go well because we're doing cool things, and that's what kind of social media is. You share cool things, and you're in a position that people idolize you and want to do what you're doing. So by showing it off, you've got an opportunity to engage with people and stuff. Because if what I was doing was super boring and no one liked, then social media wouldn't make much sense. But so I realized that's a lot of the reason why people follow me, is because they see in that, like, oh, I want to do that. Especially like my following is very under 18, and which I think comes mostly from the YouTube side, because that's that kind of audience. Whereas your traditional cyclocross rider, definitely in Belgium, their kind of target market is like middle-aged man or women. And those type of fans don't really know who I am because they don't watch YouTube. So that's like my main outlet is really YouTube, because I'd say I'm one of the only kind of people at this level doing cyclocross with YouTube. And if you're the only person to do it, then people are going to watch. So that's where a lot of people know me from.
That's great. Yeah. And I think, do you consider that then to be like a part of the job, or is it still just doing it for fun?
On the team I am at the moment, it's a bonus, but it's not really high priority. Like, for example, this week I've got 2 videos to edit, I guess, from Overijse and Koppenberg, but I haven't even started them yet. So like sometimes it's in a priority, sometimes it's not. Definitely, if I was to go further along in my career, an editor would be the kind of next thing to edit videos. But I don't know how much I would want to give away my kind of video production side of things, because the reason I like it is because I do it. So I don't know if I could give it away to someone else to edit or to produce, but yeah, for now, is as you say, it's just that balance. Like when I'm training, right, and at home and all of that, like making videos is great. It's a great way to pass time, but it goes a little bit to the bottom of the pile when there's other things on.
Understandable. Yeah. Cameron, I kept you for an hour. Thank you so much for chatting. Best of luck this weekend. I'll be checking, Cyclocross 24 to see the results. And yeah, maybe we can catch up in the future sometime.
Yeah, no, anytime. Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Cool.
See you, man.
See you,
Bye.
mate.